This is the Morning Tempo Podcast. I am your host, Rabanzo. On this podcast, I have conversations with business owners and the entrepreneurial with the slant toward creativity. It's an opportunity for you to learn with me from people who are finding success in the business world, all intended to make your entrepreneurial journey a little bit easier. Angie K Love just published her first novel, Awakening Hearts, A Tale of Love Across Lifetimes. Angie and I have been acquainted for about 10 years. We recently reconnected by way of an accidental email, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, before I get to that, if you've listened to this podcast before, you may have gathered that I am a musician, but you may not know that I'm also a freelance web designer specializing in functionality, user experience, and security. If your business or nonprofit is thinking about a new website or redesigning the one you have, contact me for more information. You can find all my contact details at morningtempo.com. I would be delighted to discuss your project, answer your questions, provide a quote. I'm here for you. Again, that's morningtempo.com to contact me about your next website project. So back to that accidental email to Angie. I did that thing where you inadvertently allow your email service provider to send an email to all contacts. That's right, all of them. Oops. This turned out to be a twist of good fortune, though. Angie was about to publish her book when she received my email, and we decided it was a good opportunity, an opportune time for a conversation on this podcast. In fact, it was a nice opportunity to hear about the journey of writing Awakening Hearts, Angie's journey, that is. As the title might imply, the book does touch on the subject of love. You can read a synopsis and find video readings by Angie herself on her website, angieklove.com. In this conversation, we do talk about Angie's writing journey, the many things she learned, the people she met along the way, her move to writing full-time, how about that, what she plans after publishing this novel, and more. I think Angie is digging her heels in on this writing thing, though. She's already working on her next book, which she hopes to publish next year in 2022. No pressure, Angie. You got this. Find all of Angie's work, including her new novel, Awakening Hearts, A Tale of Love Across Lifetimes, at angieklove.com. Please enjoy my conversation with Angie K Love. Angie, thanks for joining me for this conversation today. I really appreciate it. It's been so long.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here and to be speaking with you.
So your book's actually coming out on the 11th. I knew that, and you mentioned it sort of pre-roll here, that it was coming out the day before. I'm hoping to get this thing, our conversation, published, but congratulations. I gather it's been like 6 years in the making almost. Is that right?
It has been. I started writing this book in the summer of 2015, and I had set a goal at the time to finish it in a year. But then I went through a lot of major life changes. It had to be shelved for a while. And it wasn't until a couple of years later I picked it up again and got serious about it. And then I learned that this journey is much more involved than I ever imagined. So it's been an exciting journey. I've learned a lot, and it's been like a marathon, really.
How many words approximately is the book, by the way?
The book is almost 150,000 words, closer to 145. Yeah, it was at 170,000, and I whittled it down quite a bit. So I'm a prolific writer.
I know that had to have been hard, and then on top of that, you're weaving a story together. And I asked the question because I put out a small book a few years ago, a much shorter, much quicker read, but I know what it is just to get the words on the page and everything. And then, but lucky you that you have had so much to say about it that you had to go through and chop things out probably, huh?
I guess I had a lot to say, yes. And one of the things actually I learned on this journey is that sometimes less is more. And there's a quote, this is not a Stephen King quote, I forget now the guy who quotes it, but it says, murder your darlings. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is to take out anything that doesn't drive the story forward. And that was super hard for me to do because there are passages in my book that I loved and I had to take them out. But once I took them out, I could see that it was better for the story. But it was one of the hardest things to do, actually.
Yeah, sure. I know. I thought that quote as well was Stephen King for the longest time, and it was only like maybe in the last year that I gathered it was someone else whose name I don't know, but I had Stephen King ingrained in my mind, but he actually quoted someone, I guess, and so it stuck as his.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, it was something similar. I have the quote on my social media, but it's Sir something. It was some fancy name.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I have not read the entire book. In fact, I've kind of just started it. I was going to comment on just one thing that I believe is in the first video reading that you did about the
Uh-huh.
different time frames that happen. And I was kind of laughing after I heard you talk about it, laughing at myself because in recent fiction that I've read I always struggle with time changing. It hits me as a surprise if I don't know about it coming ahead.
Uh-huh.
Although maybe I don't recall if the prologue sort of gave that away. But anyway, when I was watching, I was laughing. I was like, oh yeah, I was kind of like, okay, what just happened? But
I think
what?
it takes a little bit of getting used to, and then you get into the flow, and
Yeah.
then it gets easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Now, I gather, I don't know this to be true, and you can elaborate if you want or not, but that there are two time periods and that are the primary setting for the book. So, unlike
Hmm.
some other fictions I've read, not in your genre, but where there's like multiple time periods happening, which gets extremely hard. But it seems like it would
Hmm.
make it kind of an easier read through the whole. But is that right? There's essentially two time periods, with the exception of the prologue, right?
Yeah. So it's two different lifetimes that run in parallel. So we're going from one lifetime to the next, back and forth, and so they're kind of interwoven with each other. And I think the further you get into the story, the more you see the parallels, and a lot of it is kind of subtle. Um, so I think for readers who read the book, they may not even pick up everything the first go around because there's things that I didn't even pick up when I wrote the book. And then my editor pointed these out. She was like, "Oh, you have these parallels here," and I was like, "Wow, that's awesome! I didn't even realize that." So there's a lot of nuances to that. But yeah, so it's the two timelines, two different lifetimes: 1862 Ohio on a farm, and 2014 California in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
That yeah, basically interweave there.
And I assume because of at least part of the setting, the Bay Area of California, the San Francisco Bay Area, and also references to health and wellness as in within the themes, I guess. That some of that was taken from life, at least some of it, and maybe a lot. But is that I take it that's accurate, right?
There's some inspiration from life for sure. Yes.
Yeah,
I do have some things in common with one of my main characters. She's a massage therapist, and she has a similar outlook on life to mine. Every character is ultimately fictionalized. There are definitely characters who were inspired by real life people, but every character in the book has his or her own existence. So they're a character of their own. But
yeah,
I think real life always influences anything we do. So
absolutely. In
for
the little
sure.
bit of prose, I have not attempted to write a nonfiction book, but I have been writing lyrics off and on for the past couple of years, and so those are typically stories, and absolutely I draw from life, so I would think that most people do in one way or another. You use
Yes.
people as characters or places and things like that, or things that you've seen. I've heard a lot of, and maybe fiction writers do this too, but I've heard some songwriters say that they gather a lot from TV as well, things that they've seen on TV.
That makes sense. I don't watch a lot of TV, so probably a little bit less for me. But actually, well, my characters in my book watch Friends together, the TV show. So a little bit of TV influence there. And there's a few quotes from Friends, and I think most people are probably familiar with that show, so they'll be able to relate to that. But yeah, it could be a little bit of that subconsciously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I take it this is your first book.
it's my first book, debut novel.
I,
Yeah.
w- I, I was curious to know how long you have wanted to write and what other types of writing you may have done in the past, be it, anything from stuff you kept to yourself to blogging, kind of what led you up to this.
That's a really good question. I have written my whole life. I remember journaling. I think one of the first memories I have was when I was maybe 6 years old and my family traveled to England. I grew up in Germany. We went on a trip to England and we stayed at a bed and breakfast. And that was actually when I first started learning a little bit of English. And I still have somewhere this old little diary where I talk about we had bacon and eggs, and I had the funniest spelling for it, phonetically spelt it out with my
Mm.
German knowledge. So I was journaling when I was really young, and then in second grade, I think it was on the next trip to England, I met a German girl on one of those red double-decker buses in
Mm.
London by chance, and we exchanged our information and started writing to each other. And we would write like 16-page letters, front and back. So a lot of my writing happened that way. I did not love writing in school because it was so prescriptive, like I had to write to analyze something, or it just didn't feel as creative. And then the feedback from the teachers always felt so subjective. Like one year I'd have a teacher that loved my writing, and the next one they didn't love it so much. But I've always preferred the creative flow. I've not been so much someone who's like, okay, write about this and research this and analyze this. I can do it, but it doesn't hold much interest to me. And so I've always loved to read, and my whole life I've always wanted to write a book. I thought at one point I would do it by the time I was 30. That was my goal. Now I'm 42. And I did finish my first draft for this book by my 40th birthday, like literally days before my 40th birthday. So, and then who knew it was going to take another 2.5 years to actually bring it to publication. But yeah, it's been a lifelong dream. So it's very meaningful for me to get to this place in my life.
Well, I assume that writing was at least some of the hardest part, but outside of that, what has been the most challenging aspect of working toward the day where it's available for people to buy, to download? What's been the hardest part for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's so many layers. I mean, when you say writing, even that encompasses so much, because there's writing the first draft, which is a much more free flow, creative flow. And then there's editing. And I've gone through probably 7 rounds of revision in total, six or
Hmm.
seven. And those, that's, you use a different part of your brain. I mean, then that's more left brain, right? Because then you're having to look at, okay, did I overuse this word? And maybe you use a word in a sentence and it's perfect, but gosh, you just use it like 2 sentences down and you shouldn't use the same word. That part could be really tedious at times. And then it could also be extremely satisfying, when you embellish a sentence and it just like flows off your tongue and it's like, oh, this is perfect. Other than that, I think there's just been a lot to learn. It's all been fun. It's just been also very time and energy consuming, but learning to format the book, learning everything about KDP KDP is a Kindle Direct Publishing. You probably know about that. Working with editors and proofreaders, working with a designer. And can I show off my book?
Of course, yeah.
My designer, she's actually in Germany. She's a young woman from Guatemala living in Germany, and I found her over the internet. I came across a piece of her art and just loved it, and I contacted her on a whim to see if she would design my book cover. And 2 weeks later I heard back, and she said she wasn't taking commission work right now, but my project spoke to her right away and she would do it. So we've been working together, which has been amazing. One of the hard parts about that has there just have been a lot of scheduling holdups. So it took a lot longer than I thought, but it's been so worth it in the end. I'm so happy with the beautiful cover she designed.
That's nice.
Yeah, those have been some of the challenges. And I think the next big challenge will be learning how to advertise it. I signed up for a course with a guy called Brian Cohen. It's called Amazon Ad School. And I understand a lot of people have had success with that. This is probably my least favorite thing about this, but I got to learn it. So yeah, those are some of the challenges.
If you ain't marketing, you're
Yeah.
not selling.
I mean, that's the thing. Ultimately, it's a labor of love, and we put, hundreds, if not thousands of hours of work into it, and thousands of dollars into production. And
then the work begins.
And of course, we just want people to read it and enjoy it. And it would be great too to be able to make a living in the end, right? So
yeah.
There's that.
I believe I read about your cover design artist on your blog. You wrote about her, yes, and she's on Instagram.
You might have,
yeah.
Yeah.
She has maybe dolphins as in some of her artwork, right? And definitely women in them, right?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. Her company, I guess, or her design work is called Women's Magic.
Yeah, yeah, that's the one.
And it's all centered around, it's designed for women and helping women to be more in touch with their intuition and their bodies and, kind of love themselves. And the first design that I came across of hers is the silhouette of a nude woman standing on the back of a whale that's swimming toward the horizon. And it has just this magical quality to it. And that was what really drew me in. It actually was really cool how that came to be because I'd been thinking about my cover for a long time. I didn't really know quite what I'd wanted to look like. And I've been doing some research to look at cover designers and, all these things you have to learn. Like, where do you go? Who do you ask? How much you pay for everything?
Sure.
And so I remembered, I often forget to do this, but when I remember, I was out for a walk and I had a little talk with the universe. And I was like, please guide me to the perfect person, give me the perfect inspiration. And then the next day I came across her design and I reached out to her and she responded. So it really felt like a gift from the universe, that I was
Yeah.
guided to her.
It looks
Yeah,
great. And Silly Me actually kept her name in front of me because I was going to put her Instagram on the post for your episode. I don't know if
that's
she
great.
pronounces it Jimena Vasquez, but that's the way I assumed she did. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
cool. Yeah, she does have some cool work, so that's nice. And you've been, I know
yeah.
you don't feel this way because I think you wrote as much, but you've been a pretty good blogger. You've been, I know you're not doing it every week or maybe not every month, but you've been doing it for a bit. And so
Yeah, yeah.
kudos.
Yeah, thank you. That's right. You were asking about that and I got sidetracked.
No, no.
And blogging is something that I've done actually for many years. My current blog I started just about 2 years ago. I first started blogging, I think around 2005 or so.
Oh, wow.
And at the time it was a private anonymous blog and I made some really wonderful friendships. And then later on, I blogged for the acupuncture practice that I worked in. And then at some point, I started my own personal blog that was focused on inspirational thoughts and wellness related things.
Mm-hmm.
And then this current blog, I still bring in some of that, especially the inspirational stuff that's kind of part of my nature, always trying to find the positive and partly probably because I need the inspiration for myself. So if I can share it with others, it helps inspire me too. And then a lot of that blog has been about just my writing journey. But yeah, I do. I love it.
Very good. Yeah. It looks like you have been
Yeah.
doing great. Hopefully, the newsletter is as prolific as I saw that you have one on there on the website. So you've mentioned made reference to your time doing acupuncture. When we met, you were doing it, and I was looking over your past a bit, trolling your social media. You were in that line of work for about 15 years, and it looks like you kind of are making a move in a different direction entirely. And I don't know if that's exclusively to be writing, or maybe at least it has been for the past couple of years. But can you talk a little bit about the changes?
Yeah, we'll see. This was actually unexpected for me. Something came up that I didn't see coming, but my whole life I always dreamed of being able to write full time, and it never really seemed like a possibility. And something came up that kind of pushed me over that cliff. The universe was like, okay, it's time. And so I resigned from my position end of May. And it was like, okay, here's my opportunity. So I decided to give myself this time. And I'm fortunate that I have some money and savings that I can take some time to just focus on my book. And then we'll see what's next. To be honest, I don't know yet. I mean, it would be fantastic if I could make a go at it with my writing. I know most writers have to publish many books before they can actually live off of their writing.
Yeah.
I do have a second book in the works, so we'll see when that comes out. I may return to acupuncture next year, but I haven't fully decided yet. So we'll see. We'll see how it
Okay.
goes.
You still like
Hmm.
it, but the writing is so fun. You would just as well do that if you're able to keep doing it and do that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it might be nice to do a combination of the two.
Yeah.
What I really like about the writing is that I can structure my days the way that it works for me. I have a very unusual body rhythm, I think, compared to most people. I thrive at night. And in the daytime, mornings are always very rough for me. So this allows me to really tap into my creative flow at night. I can stay up as long as I want and get up whenever I want.
Yeah.
So that part's been really nice for me. And just to have the flexibility of being able to go out for daily walks and feed my body when it's hungry. And, like it's just been nice to have that flexibility. But I do I love working with people, and I do miss the part where there's an immediacy to the rapport with people in acupuncture, including that immediate feedback. I mean, I provide a service and then immediately people feel better and they tell me the impact it's had on them. And then with writing, I think my writing will have an impact on people, but it's just not as immediate. It's years down the line. It's maybe I will hear from them, maybe I won't. So there is that part that I really enjoy about the body work, and it would be nice to do a combination of the two, but we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll
it
see.
has to be a silo in comparison, having clients in the health and wellness field to going to spending a lot of time alone working on your book. But now you're at the part where you have to
Yeah.
spend more time with other people, right? For the book.
Yeah, and this is actually really fun because I get to do something like this now. And there's a lot of networking now. I've met some really cool people on this journey. A lot of other authors mostly, but also other people. And yeah, so now this is the part where I actually get to receive some of that feedback. People are starting to read my book and tell me how they feel and what it stirs up for them. So now there's more of that interaction again, and I really do enjoy that.
Cool. So your published date is November 11 of this year that we're almost
Yes.
done with 2021. Are you
Yes,
planning
oh
to
my
do any
gosh.
more? Yeah, are you planning to do any more video readings between now and then or after?
Between now and then, maybe I might. Yeah, definitely after. I will be doing more video readings. I started a YouTube channel. I did a few videos last year at the start of the quarantine just to help bring some inspiration and upliftment, hopefully, to people. But I just posted them on Instagram and Facebook. Now I finally started a YouTube channel. So I will be doing more videos there, and some of them will be readings. And there will be more. I did one recently where I did like a little guided meditation visualization, and people told me it really actually helped them and they liked it. So I do plan on doing some more of those as well.
Oh, very nice. And then
Mm-hmm.
what is special? What's about your newsletter? Why would someone want to sign up?
Good question. My newsletter really right now is centered mostly on my book writing and publishing journey. In the future, it might be more educational in that respect, but right now it's more like my personal musings and my own inspiration along the way and what I've learned and, what to expect around my book publication. So people who, want to know more about my book and future books, it'd be great to sign up.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe about you and what's going on in your head, right?
For sure. Yeah. Always a little bit of that.
Tell listeners what the best find or one of the coolest things you learned along the way that's specifically related to getting your book out there that has been either already massively helpful or shows so much promise you're excited about it still.
Good question. There are so many things. I mean, what comes to mind is I found an editor just about a year ago, actually. This was another one of, I had a couple editors I thought I was going to be working with, and neither of them came through. And I was waiting, and I really wanted to make progress on the book. And so finally, I was like, okay, universe, bring me the right person. And lo and behold, I was scrolling through Fiverr. It's a website where you can hire people, different services. And I was just about to give up. And then I found this lady, Stephanie, who I've learned so much from. And one of the things that's been most crucial, I think, in making my book more alive and more accessible is she taught me about the importance of beats in the story. And beats are basically the little body movements and the little physical happenings in the story. Like, for example, there's a chapter where my main character, Sage, meets her friend Trish for sushi. And it's those little things like, the steam of her hot tea and how that kind of like stings her lips as she brings her cup of tea, interspersed in the dialogue, so that I still have my fair share of ellipses, like the dot, dot, dot in my book. But instead of having so many of them, you break up the dialogue by bringing in those little beats, like their body movements, one of them like reaching for something or playing with her chopsticks or whatever it is, So that has felt like a really crucial piece to just make my story shine and make it more accessible to others so they can feel like they're there, like they're in the story. And that's something my readers have told me, that they feel like they're there with my main characters.
Now, that's a great tip. I'm already remembering a couple of those that I've read in the book, and as I go through it now that you've said that, I'll notice it a lot more and say, "Oh, good job."
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. The things we don't know. I didn't know anything about writing a novel. I just started writing a story, and then I learned after the fact how you actually make a novel shine. So it was a lot of rework, and I'm hoping that the next novel will be a lot faster to write with everything I already know. But it's been great to learn all that. I feel like I just went through a PhD in novel writing.
Well, that's good. That means you're surrounding yourself with a lot of people who have done it or have worked a lot with others and have, great advice to share. And I'm sure with the desire that you have to keep writing, that one day you'll be among those just sharing all kinds of tips with early and young writers yourself. So congratulations. I'm excited for you. And I am excited to put this conversation out. I wish you all the luck in the world with selling lots of books and getting lots of readings and book signings and things.
Thank you so much.
Well, I will definitely be talking to you soon. Thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Awesome. And maybe if I can just let the listeners know about my website.
They are going to know, but go ahead.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, please.
So you can find me at angieklove.com, ANGIEKLOVE.com, and you'll find all the information there.
Perfect. And
you know what? Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and that's great that you said that, because with all good intentions, I'll say it in the intro, but sometimes I forget.
That can happen.
Thanks, Angie.
It's great to see you again.
Likewise. Cheers.
Bye.
This episode was powered by Podcast Startup. I have spoken with many podcasters about the struggles of starting a podcast. They've told me their many challenges revolved around fear, procrastination, and tech. I know what that feels like, yet I have recorded and published over 260 podcast episodes. If you want to share your expertise, garner expertise from others, dig deep into a special interest, help others, get more website visitors, expand your personal brand, grow your network, then podcasting might be for you. If fear, procrastination, or technophobia are preventing you from starting your podcast, check out Podcast Startup by Morning Tempo and the Unstarving Musician. The course is for creators with a voice. Podcast Startup covers tech, that's gear and software, hosting, editing, formatting options, marketing, and more. Learn more about Podcast Startup. To learn more, go to morningtempo.com/podcast startup. Not only will you find out if Podcast Startup can help you realize your podcast dream, you'll also get free actionable tips on starting a podcast. One more time, that's morningtempo.com/podcast startup. Please help other creative entrepreneurial types find this podcast by following it on your favorite audio service. If you like what I do on this podcast and would like to help me do more with the podcast, please sign up for the Morning Tempo Insiders community newsletter. You can do so by visiting morningtempo.com. It's free. The newsletter and occasional email from me is filled with tips and insights for your creative entrepreneurial journey. It's based on experience, expertise, and knowledge of my podcast guests, various other marketing and sales pros that I follow, and personal research that I do for business. And you'll get details on the latest episodes of the podcast. And if you really like what I'm doing here, visit morningtempo.com/crowd sponsor for more information about producer and sponsorship opportunities. All right, I am out. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao for now.